Welcome to all of you who are joining. Glad to see you. Thanks to everyone who's coming on. We'll give everybody just a few minutes to get on and then we'll get started. But I'm very glad to see all of y'all here so far. It's just now turning 1 o'clock, so we're going to give people just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. But welcome to all of you who are on. It's always sweet to see people we know and also exciting to see new people. So welcome to all of you guys. And thanks to all of y'all who are saying hi in the chat. Please feel free to share in chat. Well, I think, there's always people who join as we go along, because I know sometimes things come up and it makes it hard for people to join from the beginning. But we want to go ahead and get started because we like to start on time, and just welcome you all for being here. I know I saw quite a few, like I said, old friends listed, but also new friends as well. And I'm Joy Hoke, and I'm the Executive Director of Families as Allies, and I'll be sharing this webinar with you today. So thank you for being here. I'm going to minimize my picture so I can see what I'm doing. So this is about we have this whole series of webinars that's about partnering in your child's behavioral health care. And this particular one is, how in the world do I know if my child might need some extra help? And if they do, where do I go? How do I get that? So that's what we'll be talking about today. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we were founded in 1990, and we're the only statewide organization run by and for families of children with mental health or behavioral health challenges in Mississippi. And we support each other as families in a lot of different ways, and then we work together to make things better for our children. And our vision is that all children, not just ours, but all children will have the opportunity to reach their potential and succeed. And you'll see where that emphasis on all children becomes important. It's important anyway, but as how it relates to this webinar as we go along. And our mission is that families are partners in their children's care. And sometimes, whoops, I slipped on my slide. People think when we say that we mean we go around making families do stuff and make them partner on their children in their children's care. That's not what we mean. We know as families that we're one of the most important partners in our children's care, and that our mission at Families as Allies is to make sure that things work so that families can be in that role that we all know they're already in, that's recognized by everybody, the importance of their partnership. These are things we care about. First of all, our core values, that we value every child and family. So any family who identifies as having a child with a mental health or behavioral health challenge is welcome to be part of us. We value excellence, partnership, and accountability. And those are all things that we value, that we're striving for in the systems that serve our children and advocating for. But also when we look at ourselves as an organization, those are things we hold ourselves accountable for too. So when you work with us and you see our work, if it doesn't appear that we're being true to those values, we want to know, and you can always tell me. And then our work is built on 3 pillars, and you can see them on the side of this slide. We support families, community, and community is anybody working with families, and then positive change that comes about by all of us working together, particularly at the systems level, to make things better for our children. Sometimes people hear all that and they're like, but what do you all actually do? So I'll just give everybody a minute to look at this slide. And these are things we actually do related to those 3 pillars. And one of those we're doing right now, well, 2 of those. All of our training is open to families, even if it's focused on providers. This is a training that's focused on everyone. But you'll see under families, we do family training and commonly encountered issues, and under community training, those working with families. So that's something we're doing today, and you can see some of the other things that are going on. So I'll give everybody a minute just to look at that. And there will be times, in fact, quite a few times during this webinar today, we'll be asking for your feedback and asking you to reply in the chat box with your ideas. But as we go through these slides, if you see something that you have questions about, feel free to put them in the chat box. And if I miss them at the time, I promise we'll get back to them. Right, I'm just double checking. Looks like in chat, we just have everybody saying hi so far. All right, and as part of that goal of accountability, we always want to say what we're trying to do in a webinar or any training that we do, so that you'll know, first of all, if it matches for you. And then we can look back at the end and say, did we actually do that? And if not, what do we need to do to make sure it gets done? So today's goals, and this is a webinar that is typically focused on families, but anyone working with families, we hope by hearing this information, it gives you ideas about how to be supportive of and partner with families in their children's behavioral health care. So first of all, to give families practical information about children's behavioral health and why it's an important part of health overall, to help families know if their child might benefit from extra support, to support families in finding the right kind of help if their children need it, and emphasize how important families are in their children's care and how they can be part of and support behavioral health treatment for their children. And I'm not gonna read you every slide, but these first few I am reading to make sure that we're all on the same page. These are our core beliefs about families and our core beliefs that we hope that all of you will join us in supporting and thinking about, and that as work is done with children and with families across systems, that we can all unite around these beliefs. And the first one, and these speak directly to families, we believe you, and we as family members, you know your child better than anyone. You as their family are your child's strongest advocate. And we believe that systems should follow laws and policies about your rights. And you'll see as we, in all of our trainings, they typically reflect back on a particular belief. Well, they should reflect back on all of them, but this one has a lot to do with you knowing your child better than anyone and then advocating for what they need. All right, we're going to give everybody a chance to think. And I want you to look at these 3 pictures. And in your mind, just finish the sentence. So example, or the phrase. The first one is a picture of day and, then we have an arrow that's going to the right, and then a picture of hot and. So how would you finish, they're not full sentences, those phrases? I'll give everybody just a minute. All right, we have a star student out there who put hers in there. Yes. So imagine a world with, so day and night. Let's go back for a minute. Right and left, hot and cold. Now, I want you to imagine for a minute how weird the world would be. And I know right now the world probably feels kind of weird to all of us as we're negotiating all this, but to imagine a world with days, but no nights, with right but not left. If we had hot but not cold. Now we know we need all those things in the beginning of the phrase, but how weird would it be to have them without the thing that seems like they're opposite? It may not really be their opposite, but the thing that makes them complete. How well would that work? So I'll give everybody just a minute to think. I had some very creative responses, sunny day in May and hot tea. So people finish those phrases in some different ways. Okay. All right, so I think we all have some recognition that it wouldn't work too well to have days but no nights, right but not left, and hot without cold. But we do tend to do this when we think about health and mental health or behavioral health. And we tend to use the phrase behavioral health because that's a broader term. And when we say behavioral health, we're meaning anything that affects a child's mental well-being, or with the young ones, their social emotional well-being, and also the way their behavior is. And that can be something that just happens, or it can be something from outside of them is affecting them, like trauma or some significant change in circumstances, like not being able to live with their family anymore, or another disability. Anything that affects that whole realm of functioning is what we consider behavioral health. And one thing that people tend to do is separate behavioral health from physical health. We see that even in our organization, like that's that organization for kids who have, families whose kids have that kind of problem. That's not a problem my kid has or whatever. But the reality is just like those other things all go together, the things that seem like they're opposite are really just two parts of one whole thing, like night and day make up a complete day. So behavioral health and physical health make up our total well-being of our overall health. So they're not these two separate things, and they're certainly not something like mental health that just is an issue that relates to some children. And that's a good point. Jana Mills just shared, like no balance. We want these two things to be balanced. balanced. So just to put that in words, I know we have some people who are more visual and some people who are more auditory. So we had our visual image. Our brains are part of our bodies, and behavioral health is part of health. And as I mentioned, in young children, we usually talk about social and emotional health as opposed to behavioral or mental health. And separating behavioral health from overall health can increase stigma and make it less likely children will get the help they need. Because again, we're saying if we do that, like there's just this group of children over here, they're the ones that have behavioral health problems, and we don't need to look at everybody's overall health. And it can make it less likely for them to get the help they need. Also, not realizing that physical health problems can lead to mental health challenges may keep us from being as supportive as possible to children who have severe or chronic medical conditions. Because if we see that as just, well, that's just a physical thing and there shouldn't be any reason why that should have any intersect with their mental health or how they're doing, we can put them in a bad position. So I'm going to stop for a minute and see if anybody has any thoughts about this concept they want to share. Overall health and balance. And I'm really glad to see these comments about health, because we want our children to be healthy. We don't want to just get rid of the thing that is keeping them from being healthy. We want to focus on how do we help a child be healthy, not just get rid of a symptom. And children who are healthy tend to have fewer symptoms, but we want them to have health, not just the absence of symptoms. And that's true in physical health too. Now, we would like everybody to stop and reflect, and I would appreciate y'all sharing your thoughts on what makes it hard. And this can be either individually or just as people when you think about it. What makes it hard to think about behavioral health as part of health? And I'll give everybody a few minutes to reflect on that, and we'd appreciate you sharing your thoughts in the chat box. And if that isn't something that you personally have found hard, if you can think about like other people you know, what seems to make it hard for people to think about behavioral health as part of health? That's a good point from Gina about it's not as easy to evaluate behavioral health. You can't use a thermometer and we can't see it. That's a really good point. It can be hard to grasp, hard to hang on to. Another, it's not always visible, or at times these issues are awfully simply reason to blame a child for poor choices. Social norms. Many people do not understand behavioral health, or they are not aware of behavioral health. It's not talked about in different cultures. That's a good point. And it may be defined differently in different cultures. Yeah, sometimes they're not even aware it's a thing. And sometimes that's the starting point of just realizing it's a thing and it is as much a part of health as other things. And since it's not a visible, like you can see a hurt arm, you can't always see hurt emotions or a hurting brain. And it's easy to take those things and attribute them to something else, like a spiritual flaw, or like you said, just blaming the child. Those are some helpful answers. Now, any thoughts about why we keep talking about behavioral health and why are we talking about health instead of what's wrong? I alluded to some of it. But does anybody have any additional thoughts about that? Okay, I'll go back to what I was saying, that this isn't about either with behavioral health or physical health, just getting rid of a symptom. Like when you think about the physical side of health, you know, we want children to be able to play, we want them to be able to do things. And like if they have a broken leg, that makes it hard to do. But if we fix the leg and for whatever reason they still can't do those other things, they're not really healthy. They've just gotten rid of a symptom. And sometimes, particularly with behavioral health, we can get very focused on getting rid of a symptom. Like I want this child to stop doing this. And a lot of times is because that symptom, like not sitting in a chair, getting angry all the time, being very withdrawn, that symptom is hard to deal with and personally can also be irritating, especially in a family situation. But to stop and think, it's not really, yes, we do want to get rid of that symptom, but what we really want is for that child to be interacting in a way that's going to be supportive of their behavioral health, not just getting rid of that symptom. And I'll even throw this out here. Sometimes, especially with teenagers, when they start talking about what they want and what feels healthy for them, they're willing to put up with tolerating some of their symptoms that we might think everyone should want to get rid of if they can have overall what they feel is a more healthy opportunity to do things. And you see that with kids who might reach a point where they don't want to take a particular medicine. And I'm not taking a stance on that, but because of the side effects, they'd rather, you see this with particularly young adults who might be having some first symptoms of psychosis, they're willing to tolerate a few or mild symptoms of psychosis like hearing voices if they're able to keep doing the things they want to do, like stay in school or keep a job, as opposed to what used to happen. There'd be so much focus on getting rid of that symptom, but to the extent that they couldn't do the things they wanted to do. So our goal, remember we talked about Families as Allies vision is for all children to have the opportunity to reach their potential and succeed. This is part of that. We want all children to be healthy and to focus on health as opposed to getting rid of symptoms. And it's not just about our kids, it's about all kids. Because what's good for children as far as their health goes, for children with mental health challenges, is going to be good for all kids. And what's good for all kids is going to be good for children with behavioral health challenges. Now, it's important when you're talking about a concept for everybody to have an agreed upon definition of it. And going back to our core values of accountability and excellence, we don't want to just grab a definition out of somewhere and say, well, this is what I think behavioral health is. And again, we're starting by defining health, the health part of it, the not the symptoms or what's wrong part. So we like to go to vetted sources, and you will see that, I hope you should, in all of our materials, like on our website and on in our trainings, that we've gone when something needs to be defined or when we're going to share resources or ideas with you, that it's through vetted sources. So this is the definition of behavioral health from the Centers for Disease Control. I'm just going to make sure I'm not missing any comments. Okay. And this is how the CDC defines behavioral health in children. So a child who is healthy on the mental and behavioral front, these are the things that they're doing. And I'm going to read these, and then I'm going to ask y'all to think of what would be an example of this. So the first thing is that they're reaching developmental and emotional milestones at the appropriate time. So I'd just like to pause for a minute, and y'all in the chat box share some ideas of what that would look like. If a child's reaching developmental and emotional milestones at the appropriate time, what would that look like? Now, I'm not expecting you to have every milestone from 0 to 21 memorized. I'm not talking about specific milestones, but just some examples of what that might look like. Okay, very good. Very good examples from Charity. Walking, okay, like walking by a certain age. Walking, several people are putting that, walking and talking by a certain age, putting sentences together by a certain age, being able to connect throughout life, being able to do that in a certain way by 6 to 8 years old, okay? Those are all very good examples. And I see I missed on the previous one a comment from Kira. I'm gonna go back to that because this is has such important implications for our system. You know, and us thinking about mental health and physical health separately. Kira shared mental health providers are separated from primary care providers. The process for delivering services is segregated. That is so true. And we've set up a system that reinforces all this. Systems can be changed, and that may be something we can all work on together. And there's definitely some mental health reform efforts going on in our state that would support that. It's interesting, we've done town halls with families across the state, and one big thing they say, if they like their children having mental health support, but they want it delivered in places their children already are, like in primary care and in schools. So that goes back to that. Okay, now back to the question at hand. Again, children learning how to walk and talk at a certain age. Their social skills and fine and motor skills developing. Okay, definitely, excellent, good examples. All right, so that's the first part of behavioral health, reaching developmental and emotional milestones at the appropriate times. Now, that means compared to other children their age. That also means that children can be looking pretty healthy in this regard, but still do things that are really hard. A 2-year-old that is reaching developmental milestones at the right time still is going to do a bunch of stuff that's hard and hard to tolerate sometimes because they're 2. That doesn't mean they're having a problem. It means that it can be challenging to deal with their behavior. Okay. The next facet of positive behavioral health is learning healthy social skills and how to cope when there are problems. Now that seems pretty straightforward, but what would be some examples of being able to tell if a child is, for their age, showing they have healthy social skills and knowing how to cope with, and having a way to cope when there are problems? Now I'll give y'all a few minutes to respond. I'm sorry, when I go to the chat box, I changed my slide. These are great examples. Understanding what emotion they are experiencing at the moment, that's definitely a healthy coping mechanism. Making eye contact, smiling, crying, self-soothing, healthy separation. Being able to make eye contact, those are all great examples. So those are healthy social skills and knowing how to cope when there's a problem. And again, a baby or toddler learning to self-soothe in some way is different than an adolescent learning to talk through their emotions and be able to resolve some things in a difficult situation, or a 8-year-old being able to label what they're feeling. So those are all great examples. And again, it's in relation to their age. And I think one thing I really like about this second one is it says when there are problems. Behavioral health isn't about there being no problems. It's about what happens when there are problems. Okay. This third one is a biggie. They're all big, but this one is kind of different. Having a positive quality of life. Now, we always like to emphasize when we do this training that we're not saying that all of these are within the child's complete control, or within the family's complete control. All of these things can be affected by other things, but particularly this one. We know there's a lot of issues that can affect a child's behavioral health. There might be things within a family, like if abuse has occurred, that's obviously going to affect the quality of their life, but there's things that may be beyond the control of that family, like poverty, somebody loses their job, even more systemic issues like systemic racism, discrimination, things like that. And I think one thing we're all experiencing right now is we're going through a global pandemic. Unless somebody is really, really, really old and was here in the early 20th century when there was the flu pandemic, we've never been through that before. That's affecting our quality of life. So it can affect a child's behavioral health. Now, I think I missed a few comments on the last one, but I want you all to give some examples in the chat box of things that could affect a child's having a positive quality of life. Okay. All right, see, these are some from previous, a child knowing how to express how they feel, having them stop and claim their undesired emotion automatically and having steps to get through and overcome it. Those are great ones on coping. And seeing parents model positive behavior and asking questions so they know how they are feeling. Those are from the previous one. And I did just get a text. We are all learning about this Zooming. If y'all can respond when you share your chat, there's an option to respond to all panelists, and there's one to respond to all panelists and attendees. Would you please respond to all panelists and attendees, and that way everyone can see what you're sharing, and I'll share these. As far as, sorry, I'm going back and forth, having a positive quality of life, what can affect that? Some things y'all shared, needs that are not met, no guardian who will listen and understand things from their perspective, not having an appropriate support system or resources or access to care. Oh, we've got 8 new ones. Lack of, okay. Needs that are not met, okay. Lack of quality education, that's a very interesting one. And when you think right now, even if everybody's doing their best, it's really hard to have access to school in a quality way. Lack of consistency with unhealthy parents. Now, I would, when you go back to our core beliefs, I think there are things that, I'm not sure how unhealthy parents is being described there or home life, but looking at that through the lens of core beliefs, a lot of times those things may be an indication of ways families need more support that we can respond to. Okay, and then could everyone respond to all panelists and attendees? All right, and parents' mental health status, like if parents themselves are dealing with a whole lot. Death of a parent, that's a huge one. Parent becoming ill and not being able to care for child. Okay, all right, thanks y'all, very helpful. And then on the last one, this may seem pretty straightforward, but just some of your thoughts on what does it look like if a child's able to function well at home, in school, and in their community? So I'll give everybody a minute to respond to that. Oh, and the last one, not having access to resources. That's a good point. All right, this is a good summary. They're able to form and enjoy positive relationships with family and with teachers, peers, and other authority figures. That's a good summary of that last one. Also can look very different at different ages. And again, just because a 4-year-old can't do that the same way a 12-year-old can, that doesn't mean that they aren't experiencing positive behavioral health. It's also interesting right now, this is another one that may not really be within people's complete control, because how can you function well at school if you don't have access to school? And some children may not have access to their home or the home that they want. And I think we're all seeing what happens when we don't have access to everything in the community we're used to. Children able to communicate effectively and voice their wants and needs with parents, teachers, and others. That's a good one. They're all good. I'm not meaning to grade these, but very helpful. Okay. So this can be a helpful definition of just how to think about behavioral health. And again, compared to other children their age, children are able to do or have these 4 things. And sometimes, when we're looking at our own children and trying to figure out, well, what is going on here? This can be a helpful place to start. Like, compared to other children their age, how's my child doing on these things? Make sure I'm not leaving any comments out. Okay. So how do I know if my child might be having behavioral health or social emotional challenges? And again, you can take those same things and flip them. So compared to most children their age, they're not reaching developmental and emotional milestones. They're having trouble learning healthy social skills and how to cope with their problems. They're having their quality of life, this one isn't phrased quite right, is not as positive as that of other children. And they're not able to function well at home, in school, and in their community. So that gives me a basis to start looking as a parent, like, or whoever is raising the child, is there something wrong? Comment? Oh, this is Raven. You were just very open to share. I think I'll give everybody a minute to read Raven's comments. That's a lot, Raven. And I think you're describing something really huge. And I just want to point out on this one, they're having trouble learning healthy skills and how to cope when there are problems. There's some problems that are so huge, like the death of a parent, that is going to be difficult for any child to not have some challenges to their behavioral health after something like that happens. And that's obviously going to affect the quality of their life, and then be challenging when you're trying to support them. And I'm glad lots of people are writing their support back to you. I want you to know, Raven, too, that we're very, very committed to supporting you as an organization, and definitely getting back with you about some of those things. Yeah. And I'm glad that people are bringing up, when we're helping children through things like that, it can feel so overwhelming, but to also think about, you have gotten this far and you have gotten them this far, and what does that say about you and your own strengths? And I also appreciate Kira encouraging you to take care of yourself, because it is so important for us to realize how much our behavioral health can be affected by all these things too. But we will definitely make sure and get back with you after this. So we were talking about, if a family, like a parent or caregiver, is trying to figure out, is something going on, looking at their child and compared to most children their age, are they reaching those developmental emotional milestones? Are they able to learn healthy social skills and cope with their problems? Is the quality of their life positive? And are they able to function well at home, in school, and in their communities? And if the answer is no, that may mean that they have some, that they need some more support with either behavioral health or mental health challenge. I'm gonna put this back up here. Okay, Raven, I'm glad you're reading all these. I think there's 29 people on this webinar, and I think each and every one of them is totally with you. Lots of sweet thoughts. And I love that you are enough, but allow people close to help you. Okay. We have this thought question at the bottom. How common do you think behavioral health challenges in children are? And I'll give you all a minute to respond to that. Okay. Don't know if there's any other responses, but I think Teresa nailed it. Very common. Behavioral health challenges are very common in children. The commonly cited statistic is 1 out of 5 children this year will have some sort of behavioral health challenge that is to the level where they would benefit from having some sort of professional support or treatment. Oh, and I was wrong, Raven. There's 32 people on this webinar supporting you. Everybody's heart's with you. And that of that 1 in 5, about 20%, that most of them are probably not going to get the kind of support they need. We also know when things are going on, like other factors like poverty, there's more likely to be behavioral health challenges, or where people are experiencing a lot of discrimination or racism. All those things might be relevant in Mississippi. And also, as we said, we got this global pandemic going on. So those kind of traumas are going to make those things even more likely. So it's very common. And sometimes people feel like, oh, you know, this is a very weird, unusual thing that's happening with my child. It's not. Behavioral health problems are common, and also they're very treatable, especially with children. Okay, Charity, I think every child goes through a season or two of behavioral health challenges. That's true. You know, when we talk about 1 in 5, or that could be true, 1 in 5 experiences this year, it doesn't mean it's the same one. And a lot of children are going to have some times where they're having difficulty coping with something. So sometimes people wonder about, well, like how long, if they've just had, you know, something going on for a while, how long should I wait? Now, if it's something severe or life-threatening, you want to deal with that right away. But if something lasts longer than 2 weeks, that's usually something to start looking at. Okay, so with what's going on, it can feel normal that there's lots of behavioral health problems. Kira brings up, the earlier we identify, the more important, the more that's going to help. That's true. And everyone needs time. There remains, unfortunately, a stigma related to behavioral health. That's for sure. And that's one reason we want to have things like this, but even more so, why we want to see behavioral health as part of overall health and get those services and supports out to where children already are to decrease the stigma. Okay, so it is very common. Now, in a way, we have learned over the years in doing our training that we have the people who want an introduction to the concept, which is basically what this is today. And then we have people who want to go more in depth. And often those people like to look at a lot of additional resources. This PowerPoint and webinar will be on our website. And what this is a list of resources where you can get more information about what behavior is typical for a child, to learn more about if your child might need some more support. And I'm glad Kira brought up young children, because we know it's very important to address problems from a very young age. We also know those problems can look different and be a little different in the way they should be approached and supported with children who are young children, who are young. So when you get this, you'll see that the resources are divided up. And again, some great places to start besides these websites are the person who provides your child's medical care, a licensed mental health provider, and reliable internet sites. Please don't just go Google if you think your child's having mood swings, bipolar disorder in children, and just believe. You can do that if you want, but please don't believe everything that comes up. So one thing we've done, and again, this is both on our website and will be in this PowerPoint. On our website, there's a tab, I think it's called resources, and there's under resources, there's helpful websites and documents or something like that. Anyway, this is on there too. What this is a list of places you can go. And when you click on this, it will take you not only to the National Institutes of Mental Health, it will take you to the page that is developed about children's mental health. And if there's a page that's for parents or families, it will take you to that page. So these are some great internet sites. Now we just want to check in. This group has been very good about sharing. If anybody's having any thoughts about all of this that's come to mind. Gina, I'm with you. I wish there was a magic wand to get rid of stigma. Now, sometimes, especially if you're a parent, realizing, oh, maybe my child does have some mental health challenges that I hadn't thought about, or I hadn't thought about in this way, or I hadn't thought about that maybe they are behind where their peers are and how they're developing. It can feel like a mountain. We want you to know there is always help to get up the mountain. And so these are some things we encourage as an organization. First of all, to start with your friends and family. They're the folks who are always going to be with you, and turning to them for that emotional support. But it's okay to just pick the ones you trust and who make you feel like you get it. They get it. If somebody's not making you feel like they get it when you talk to them about your child, you don't have to keep talking to them. We really encourage you to reach out to the people who your gut tells you you can trust. Family-run organizations can be a great place where there are other families who have been in your shoes. We're one of those. You learned about us at the beginning. There's other family-run organizations in the state that we work closely with and we know do a great job. The Parent Training Information Center is a group that works across disabilities on education advocacy. Family Voices is a family-run organization that works with families of children with special health care needs. The ARC works with families of children who have developmental and intellectual disabilities. Children don't necessarily fall in one box, and we all end up working with each other, but there's lots of support out there. It also can help with that when that mountain seems really, really hard to climb, to remember that children can and do get better with the right kinds of help. And for all the moms who are on this webinar, I think all of moms are born with a blame gene, where we tend to blame ourselves for what happens with our children. Now, any of us can look and go, I wish I would have done this differently. That's okay. We can learn from that. But just because your child has a problem, it doesn't mean that you're what caused it. And even if you engaged in some behavior that contributed to your child having a problem, it doesn't mean that that has to be the only way you see it for the rest of your life. To reframe blame, if you're mad at yourself for getting impatient with your children, to look at that and think, okay, I'm mad at myself because I really want to be patient. Maybe what that's teaching you is to give yourself a break, and to also give yourself a pat on the back, because it's really important to you to do the right thing by your kids. Are we able to share this information with a friend or maybe your website? Yeah, we will put, what we will do is put this power, and again, we're running a little behind on this, just with because we're doing a lot Mental Health Awareness Month, and we've just made a lot of changes all at once. But we will get this up on our website, both the recording of this webinar and also these slides. They'll be in a PDF format, and you can share them with whoever you want. And then always congratulate yourself on making it this far. And I know with Raven sharing earlier in the webinar a lot that was going on with her. That's amazing, your journey. And sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for what we've already done. And sometimes with our especially with our children, sometimes it helps to think about, if somebody else described your situation to you, what would you tell them? And chances are you tell them they've done a really good job. They've gotten through a lot of things. And then along with that, to celebrate your victories. This is some ways to actually find a licensed mental health provider. If you go through all this and think, I do think my child needs some extra help. And these are some ways to do it. It's fine to ask other families, but make sure who they recommend is licensed. Now, licensing isn't everything, and it doesn't guarantee that person's going to be good, but it does indicate a certain level of expertise. And it also gives you a place to go if that person does something that you have concerns about. You can go to their licensure board, asking their medical provider or their school. Sometimes churches are aware of providers. And then we give you, and again, this will be available to you on our website. You can go to the National Association of Social Workers Mississippi chapter or any of these, and you can see who's certified or licensed in those areas. Okay, we've got some hands raised. Okay, and I saw two people raise their hands, but I apologize. I am not seeing on here what to do with raised hands. Now, I do know one of those people who raised their hand is a licensed social worker, so she may have just been sharing that. But these are some places you can go. In the public mental health system, they have, through that system, certified providers within the public mental health system, And this shows you the link of where you can go to find those people in your area. And we've shared a lot today. I'm going to go through the last few slides a little bit more quickly to make sure we finish by 2. But to make sure that y'all have this information. And then if you have additional questions that we don't get to in this, we're certainly willing to get with you after. So this whole idea about diagnosis can sometimes make people feel really funny, like, I don't want a label on my kid. Now I want you to go back to that whole idea of behavioral health, mental health is part of health. I don't think we would do that so much. Like if our child's having trouble breathing and we know something's wrong and they keep having these real struggles and we go to the doctor and they say they have asthma and this is what we do about asthma. Typically we're usually not, we don't want our child to have asthma, but we're typically not going to have the reaction of don't be saying my child has asthma. Now we might, but that's not too typical. So it is a little more challenging sometimes with mental health diagnoses. And I think it may be because, first of all, we don't know quite as much about those, but that feeling of, it feels stigmatizing. Let me see. Okay, and then this is really what a diagnosis is. It's something that's based upon an agreed upon set of standards. And in the world of mental health, that's the now this is a big old title, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the Diagnostic Classification of Mental Health and Developmental Disorders of Infancy and Early Childhood. So that's for the littler ones. It's a group of symptoms or characteristics. It's not deciding everything about your child for the rest of their lives. It's saying this diagnosis means this child is doing these things or has these characteristics. It's given by a trained or licensed clinician. It is not given by another member of your family or the person you're talking to down the street. Now they may say my child has this. And that might help you, but the people who are qualified to actually give a diagnosis are trained and licensed. It can help determine treatment and give information about what to expect. Like if your child has asthma, you're going to be told these are, how to know if they're having an asthma attack, how to prevent asthma attacks. These are some things you might do different at your house. Here's an inhaler. Here's how they use that. So those kinds of things. It is not set in stone. Just because a child has a diagnosis, it doesn't mean they're going to have it for the rest of their lives. And I think we had some responses to what do you like and dislike about the idea of a diagnosis. It helps the individual know that this is a real issue for lots of people and there's a treatment so it can normalize things. And dislike, it may produce hopelessness in an individual. He or she may think that's the way it always has to be. And those are very good points. And it gets back to, it's a thing that we know right now is true. Now there's some diagnoses over time that may prove to last for a while. Some things can even be lifelong. That doesn't mean that they're not manageable. We also know with children that it's very hard to predict that. So with children, it's not a safe assumption that if they have something, it's going to last a long time. In fact, probably the opposite is true. These are, again, some ways, and these are places you can get more information to learn more about a diagnosis. This is if you want to learn more about that statistical manual. This is for a guide for lay people. And these fact sheets from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry are great. You can go there and look up bipolar disorder, and you can get a one-page explanation written by a psychiatrist that can help you understand what that means. What should you be able to expect from behavioral health treatment? An individualized practical plan to respond to the situation that brought you there. That's what you should be able to expect. And if you're not getting that, then some adjustments probably need to be made. This gives you some ideas of how to tell if the person working with your child is a good fit. I'll let y'all read that. And this also at the bottom gives more information. And this is true of any kind of mental health professional working with your child, whether it's a therapist, a psychiatrist, peer support specialist, all these things should be true. And this gets back to the idea of family-driven practice. And somebody just put something that was very consistent with family-driven practice in the comments. Remember that you as a family member, family-driven practice means families have a primary decision-making role in the care of their own children, as well as the policies and procedures governing care for all children in their community, state, tribe, territory, and nation, so that you should feel like a partner in your child's care. These are ways you can partner: sharing background information, supporting your child in partnering in their care, using your expertise to help those working with your child understand the outcomes that are most important to your family, and encouraging those working with your child to use their expertise to help people who are involved in your child's life. If you want your child's teacher to better understand your child, it may be that that person working with your child could do more good by helping that teacher and maybe doing some consultation with them as opposed to direct work with your child. That's totally up to your family, but to think outside the box that way. And then as it fits for you, consider ways to work together with other families and family-run organizations to make all this work better for all kids. All right, we are at the end of our time, but I'm just putting these back up here as what we said we would do. I'm going to leave this open for a few minutes if for any of you who have additional comments or questions, and I appreciate all of you being with us today. Look at the chat. Oh, and thank you for the thank yous. Thank you for the thank you. Appreciate it. And my email is JHOGGE@FAAMS.org if you have any other feedback or comments. And then this is Children's Mental Health. Well, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, May. Please follow us on Facebook, look at our website. And if you're not getting our newsletter, just let us know and we'll add you to the list. We got all kinds of things going on, and we will have another webinar a week from today. I think it's on family-driven practice. And I appreciate all of you being here, and I appreciate the feedback. Thank y'all so much. Okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead. I don't see any other comments coming in, but again, you are always welcome to reach out, and I hope everybody comes back next Friday. It was great being with you guys. Thank you so much. Y'all are the best. Bye, everyone. Happy, oh, wait, I have one, I forgot to click here. How do we sign up for the newsletter? There is a way you can text. You know what? If you will put your email in the chat box or even on this. Here, hang on just a second. Okay, I'm answering you on here. And you can type your email either, I'm not sure if I did this right, as an answer to what I wrote or in the chat. Oh, okay. Got your email. All right. I think I now really did get all the questions. So I am going to sign off. Thank you guys so much. And it was wonderful to see it be with y'all and see you virtually. And Dominic, did you get the email out of chat? Okay, thanks you guys. I keep saying I'm going to sign off, but I think I really am now.